Okay, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Okay. Yes, many of you met. Welcome to the class. I guess, I don't know, do you want to introduce yourself to?
Yeah, I'm Becky.
Hi Becky, I'm Ashley.
Ashley.
Avi, nice to meet you.
Avi, nice to meet you.
Okay, so that's our class. There might be others watching at home. We get about between 5 and 15 views, I think, to each of these classes. So I don't know if that's you guys who watch again, or many times, or it's one person who watches 15 times, or there are others who are following along. Whatever it is, it's great. And the class again goes in cycles, and people come in the middle. And so we're now going to just have this. We are now up to Roman numeral 3. Roman numeral 3, we did A. We did 3A1, okay, last time. So we're now up to 3A2. So on the second page, 3A2, and we just start to the beginning there. Although we did some of this, we did a little bit of B as well, actually, so it's not, okay. Also, I think for like the last 6 months, I've been mentioning that this book was about to be published. So the book is now published. The shul has 3 copies. I've lent 2 of them away to this is a remaining copy that belongs to the shul. If you'd like to borrow it, you may. I encourage owning it. I think it's at some point. So you want to borrow it until you own it, or borrow it and see. We don't need to keep a copy here in the shul. So I bought 3 copies. The shul bought 3 copies with the intention of them being lent out. But again, I think it's a worthwhile investment from what I've seen. So it's like, I think that this book was published in Hebrew many years ago. It's now in English. I think there is nothing else that's as good and as clear and as simple and as reliable and as reasonable in English as this. Okay. Okay. Any questions before we begin about stuff that's, I think should we just jump right in? Is that okay? So just the 2 things that I wanted to just sort of point out that are there on. We spoke about the way last time we spoke about the ways in which the calendar is sort of given over to the Jewish people. That was the mitzvah in the Torah of sanctifying new moon, and by the court sanctifying new moon, that gave the calendar over into our hands. Or it's a partnership between God and the Jewish people in creating the Hebrew calendar. That was last time. Here it says, each day has a defined nature. Annually, time is spiral, not linear. That means that time. I mean, I think there's a lot of. This is a lesson that I think modern society needs to relearn. That I think there's sort of an attitude that the only thing important with time is the quantity of time, and I think sort of there's an example of this. I don't know if you saw. There's a very funny website that a few days ago there. So it was. Not gonna find it. Common nonprofit terms. I don't know what they really mean. So, for example, must be proficient in Microsoft Word. That means we have people who aren't proficient in Microsoft Word on staff, okay? Right? Intricate set of group dynamics. They're painted by people you have to work with who refuse to learn a better way to work together, smarter, okay? Right? So anyway, so one of the things that one of the things that flexible. I mean, it wasn't flexible. Here it is. Yeah, right. Flexible work schedule. That means you may work whatever hours you like as long as they add up to 60 hours per week. Right? So that is a. That was the tie-in. There was an attitude. It doesn't really matter, right? When you work, when you do things, because all time is equal, and the only thing that's important is quantity time. But in fact. That's not true. That's not the way we understand time. We see time as not just having a quantity, but also having a quality. Okay, meaning that Shabbat is different than the weekdays, and the holidays are also different from the non-holidays, and that there's a special nature to certain dates on the calendar There's certain dates in the calendar that we're supposed to feel a certain way, to commemorate certain things that happen, to achieve something spiritually, communally, socially on those days. And each day, then, therefore the calendar has a certain contour. Certain days in the calendar have special significance and special qualities, and certainly Shabbat, in the course of the week. And so it's not just quantity of time, it's also quality of time. And I think the Hebrew calendar really expresses that. There's some research, what did I say? Some research that shows that even people who are unemployed still are happier on the weekends than during the work week. And why was that? Because on the weekends, all their friends are around and they can do fun things. Right on the week, and during the work week, they're just fun, right? So,
as an unemployed person right now, I can confirm this.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. I hope you find work soon. But okay. So I think that also speaks to that there's a communal nature to time. Okay, and so the holidays, Shabbat really enforces that and creates that in a way that I think a lot of modern Americans with this 24/7. Reachability, availability, work blends into non-work time blends into work time, right? You're answering work phone calls, you're responding to work emails on your phone at 10 o'clock at night, and you're also like surfing the internet, shopping for boots, at work, right? So it's sort of like this blending in a way which is, I think, harmful. I think there's an advantage to kind of keeping the different parts of life distinct and giving time a quality, not just a quantity. Okay. And also should be re-experienced. That's L'harot et Atzmo. The rabbis taught us that, for example, on Passover, every person should see himself as though he or she went personally out from Egypt. So it's not just commemorating something that happened in the past, it's feeling that feeling right now. It doesn't actually, L'harot et Atzmo, the Rambam, his version is not L'harot et Atzmo, to see oneself, but L'harot et Atzmo, to make oneself seen to others. So that's why in some communities, some Sephardic communities, people don't, on the Passover Seder, they reenact part of the story. They walk around the table or something with matzah on their back to, you see this in your, see? So that's the L'harot et Atzmo. It's not just to see oneself, but to be seen to others. So again, it's like really like re-experience. It's not just, again, this thing happened in the past that I'm celebrating, but it's like we're re-experiencing it all together right now. Again, time has not just quantity, but also quality. Okay. Letter B is the calendar. I think we spoke about a lot of this last week, last time we met. Court designated new moon, we spoke about that, right? Witnesses would come, we saw the new moon, okay. Then they had the old system of signals, right? There was bonfires on mountains, like Lord of the Rings. Then we had this element of Sfeika Dioma in the diaspora. They weren't sure. The Samaritans were lighting fires to confuse people, and so they just observed the holidays 2 days because they weren't certain. 4, Birkat HaChodesh. Birkat HaChodesh, that is a ritual we do today. Even though we now have a fixed calendar, we still say a special prayer and blessing in Shul on Shabbat prior to the new moon to kind of, bless the forthcoming new moon. We will next do that this coming Shabbat. This coming Shabbat is called Shabbat Mevarchim, the Shabbat in which we bless, because it's the Shabbat prior to Rosh Chodesh. And so right before Musaf, before the Torah is put away, we stand, we announce Rosh Chodesh, the new moon for Adar will be on whatever the day of the week it's going to be. So we announce the Moed, we announce when the first sliver of that moon is visible. We announce when Rosh Chodesh is. We all pray for the new month. That's Birkat HaChodesh. Number 5, Kiddush Levana. That's a blessing that's said after the new moon has appeared. It's sort of a celebratory ritual that's done usually on Saturday night, following the appearance of the moon. So you can say this blessing, Kiddush HaChodesh, sanctifying, celebrating the new moon. You can say it while the moon is growing, which means the first 15 days of the month, not the first day though. So it has to be like, I think 72 hours have to pass, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's only 48. I don't recall. Some number of days have to pass between the molad, the first sliver of moon, and when you can say this ritual. The moon has to be kind of sufficiently robust. It still has to be growing, so up until the 15th of the month you can say this. It's typically said Saturday night. So the first Saturday night following the new moon is when we typically say this because we're all dressed nicely in our Shabbat clothes. This is sort of seen as a special mitzvah. The new moon is here. It symbolizes the divine presence, the renewal, rebirth, the return, and so we say it typically on Saturday night. So we hear Saturday night following Rosh Chodesh. Instead of just like when leaving after we finish our services, people gather outside. We see the new moon. We recite this blessing. Part of the ritual is to go up to 3 people and say Shalom Aleichem, like greetings, and then they respond Aleichem Shalom. So if you see this, it's one of the top 5 strangest looking Jewish rituals. You'll see people gathered on the sidewalk on a Saturday night, walking around, shaking each other's hand, saying Shalom Aleichem to each other. But it's fun, and that's again once a month, more or less. Letter 6, Ibor Shana, that we spoke about, I believe, but maybe not. The leap month, the leap year. So okay, so let's talk about that. The Torah tells the solar year has 365 and a quarter, give or take, days. Okay, that's the Earth's revolution around the sun. The solar calendar determines the seasons, right? Okay. The lunar calendar is the moon's revolution around the Earth, and the moon does that every 29 and a half and change days. If you do 12 of those, you come out to 355 days. Okay, so a lunar year, so a year is really a string, it's not really a year, but like a lunar year, 12 lunar months is 355 days. So if you have a lunar calendar, you're going to be 11 days shorter every year than a solar calendar. Which means that if...
11 or 10?
355 versus 365 and a quarter.
Oh,
and a quarter. So
so
it'd be
it's
11.
a quarter.
Yeah. Is that right? 29 and a half times 12. Wanna do that?
That's every 4 years, right? So
Let's see. Hold on. That's 29.5 times 12 is 354. 354. There are 354 days in a 12 lunar months, which is 11 days shorter than, a little bit more than 11 days and a quarter shorter than a solar year. So if you have a lunar calendar, it will fall behind the solar calendar 11 days every year. Okay, so if you take, so who has a lunar calendar? So the Muslims have a lunar calendar. Ramadan is a month, it's a lunar month. It begins the new moon and ends when the moon disappears. And every solar year, Ramadan occurs 11 days earlier. So right now, Ramadan is in the summer. It'll be 11 days earlier next year, and then 11 days earlier, and then 11 days earlier, until eventually Ramadan will be in the winter, when it will be much easier, to fast until dark. I guess there should be like trips for Muslims to go to like the southern hemisphere, to celebrate Ramadan where it's winter. But in Australia, Ramadan in Australia, there should be like the Muslim version of the Pesach hotel. But so that is what happens though with a lunar calendar. Okay, if you have a lunar calendar, the Torah tells us that Pesach should be observed in the spring. It's called Shemot Chodesh Aviv. You should observe Pesach in the time of Aviv, in the springtime, when the shoots, the green, Aviv literally means like the green shoots of the new harvest, the new growth, and that's when Pesach should be observed. So how do you have Pesach in the spring if we have a lunar calendar? And the answer is Ibor Shana, Ibor means literally a pregnant year. We throw in an extra month to make sure that Pesach occurs in the spring. So what they used to do, in the time when the calendar was set by the Sanhedrin and witnesses, the Sanhedrin would send out like sort of like agents to kind of do some astronomical observations, and they basically to determine, is it so cold? Is it so cold that we need to add another month? The month was before it was Adar, the month that's coming now. They would add an extra Adar if they felt it was too cold for Nisan, the month of Pesach, which should be in the spring. So if there's still like frost on the ground, let's throw in an extra month to push off Nisan, the month of Pesach, an extra month. And so it was just basically a discretion. They would just make these astronomical, or not really astronomical, meteorological observations, like the weather is kind of cold, we need another month before Nisan, before spring. Now, interestingly, there were a couple of individuals who were not allowed to be part of that process. One of them was the king. The king could not be part of that process because the king paid his soldiers, the Talmud tells us, on an annual basis. So he would always want to put an extra month because then he'd get 13 months of work for 12 months' salary. The other person who was not allowed to be part of this deliberation was the high priest, because the high priest would have, on Yom Kippur, had to immerse in the mikveh many times as part of his very, very involved and busy day on Yom Kippur, and therefore he would want Yom Kippur to be as early as possible so that it would still be really warm in summer weather during Yom Kippur. So he would not want to have the extra month, so that Yom Kippur would be a month earlier when it's really, really hot, and so he wasn't allowed to take part in these deliberations, but they took place. And now that we have a fixed calendar, we just add this extra month into 7 out of every 19 years. It's a 19-year cycle, 7 out of every 19 years have this extra month, and if you do the math, right, let's do this, 7 times 29.5 is 206 and a half, so there'd be 206 and a half extra days every 19 years, which should equal the number of days that you're losing. That should equal more or less the 11 times whatever, okay? So now it works, okay? That's the system we have. 7 out of every 19 years, we throw in an extra month, and that's our system. One of the years which we throw in an extra month happens to be this one right now. This year is a leap year in the Jewish calendar, and the next Hebrew month is going to start just a few days. This coming week is Adar, but it's like Adar without all of the holidays that we have, without Purim. Okay, it's nearly Purim is celebrated the month of Adar, but not this year. This is Adar 1, okay, and Purim is celebrated in Adar Bet. We push off Purim to the second Adar because that's the Adar that is, closest to Passover. We want to tie, I think, conceptually Purim to Passover. Perhaps for some other reason, but I think that's why we celebrate Adar in the second, celebrate Purim in the second Adar, not the first one. But the first Adar, so it's a month without holidays, will begin next week. A month without holidays is something that rabbis like, okay? So that's coming soon. Okay, so letter 7, Hill the second, so that's the fixed calendar which we've been describing, okay? Fixed calendar, there's a cycle for the, we talked about some of the rules last time. We have a couple of rules about when Rosh Hashanah occurs, and then we alternate 29 and 30 days for the months, and depending on the day of the week of Rosh Hashanah, the two Rosh Hashanahs, we then have the winter months either have both 29 or 30 and 30, or 29 and 30 to make sure that the year has the right number of days for Rosh Hashanah to occur in the right number of days of the week that it needs to. And then we have this other cycle of 7 or every 19 years for the extra month, the leap month. Questions on anything we said so far? Okay, so let's move on and start talking about the actual holidays, okay? So number 1, Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, literally the head of the month, that's the new month. It's, in biblical times, it seems this was a bigger deal. There's some evidence from the Bible that this was treated as more of a holiday in biblical times. Like a day when people would not go to work and would sort of engage in feasting and religious activities, coming together in the congregation, whatever, engage in religious activities to the exclusion of work. That's not the case now. People go to work on Rosh Chodesh. There's no prohibition against doing labor on Rosh Chodesh, but in temple times was a musaf service, an extra service that was offered on Rosh Chodesh. And therefore, we in our prayers, we have an extra prayer added, a musaf prayer on Rosh Chodesh. In addition to Shachrit, Mincha, and Marav, the morning, afternoon, evening prayers, there's also musaf thrown in the late morning on Rosh Chodesh. And we also have additions to the rest of the liturgy. The Birkat HaMazon, the Grace After Meals, has an extra paragraph on Rosh Chodesh. The Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv Amidah has an extra paragraph on Rosh Chodesh. And some people wear somewhat nicer clothing as befits a day that's kind of special in that way. But otherwise people go to work and you wouldn't necessarily know that it was Rosh Chodesh unless you looked at a calendar. Right? But you should know because you're praying. You want to make sure you get into all of all the prayers. What we do here it says Ya'aleh Yavo, which is the name of the paragraph that's added to the liturgy and Rosh Chodesh. So we put this up here so everyone can see it. They remember hopefully. That's the way to. Okay. You know what? I don't think we. Okay, so next is Rosh Hashanah, that's number 2. But this thing, I think we have to take a step back and say something else about Rosh Hashanah and many of the other holidays. So, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot and Shavuot and Pesach, the biblical festivals that have a work prohibition, Isur Melacha, I want to mention alone their regulation is very similar to Shabbat with a couple of very important differences. And I want to sort of mention that now. So, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, also Pesach and Shavuot. These days, there is a prohibition against doing work that's identical to Shabbat, but there are 2 important differences, but really one difference that has a couple of implications. The Torah says you can't do any melacha on these days, but you're allowed to do whatever you need to eat. Unlike Shabbat, where all your food, basically has to be prepared before Shabbat starts, on Yom Tov, on these festivals, you're allowed to do what you need to prepare for food. What that basically means is you can cook, and most of the things necessary, in food, a lot of the food preparation melachot, and you can also carry. From a public domain to private domain, in a public domain, even without the benefit of an Eruv. So that's sort of, on the one hand, you can't write, you can't use electricity, you can't drive, you can't tear, you can't use bar stove, all the things we talked about in the weeks that we talked about Shabbat. It's all the same on these holidays, but it's like made more lenient in like these 2 pretty significant ways. So even if you live in a place without an Eruv, you can still carry your keys, you can carry food to someone's house, push a stroller, whatever it might be on Yom Tov, and you can cook. So that sort of, like you don't have to worry about, put the food, it's already cooked on a hot plate, you can make soup on the stove, you can, all those things. You can't light a fire on Yom Tov, but you can transfer fire and you can adjust a fire on Yom Tov. So what people tend to do is, depending on how the stove works, maybe it's a stove that can be, if you have a 24-hour candle or a 72-hour candle, you can use that to, a long match to ignite your stove. You can do that, because that's transferring a fire. Instead of, depending on how the stove works, you can't turn on the stove in such a way that causes the sparking. But if you can bypass the sparking and just use an already lit flame to ignite the stove, you can do that. If it's a pilot light that's burning all the time, and then when you just turn on the gas, you're just growing the pilot. That you can turn on, ignite, even if it's a pilot light on Yom Tov. Or what many people do is just leave one burner on the entire holiday carefully and use that to cook as needed. Or they'll leave the oven on the entire holiday. You have the oven on low, and you can just turn it up and turn it down as needed. And you can also, if it's a gas stove, you can also turn it off, I would say. You can turn the gas stove off on Yom Tov as well. Not everyone agrees with that. I think that's pretty much the turn the gas stove off on Yom Tov, the gas oven off on Yom Tov. So you can use it to cook soup or chicken, whatever it is, on Yom Tov night, Yom Tov day, whenever you're done, you just turn it off, and then you use your platter, your warming tray for, like on Shabbat for the rest of the, but you could put, on Shabbat you couldn't put soup on a warming tray, you could put soup on a warming tray on Yom Tov, right? Because there's no prohibition of cooking on Yom Tov. Do you have a question? Or?
Well, what are the restrictions for Chol HaMoed?
Chol HaMoed is let's wait for that, okay? Because I think that's actually, does the Chol have its own?
Is that separate?
It should. If it doesn't, it should. It doesn't. So Pesach and Sukkot have Chol have sort of intermediate days in the middle of the festival. Look, you can. It's best if you can take off. You should take off and not work. But you're allowed to do anything that's for the sake of enjoying the holiday more. So you can drive if it's to do something fun. Okay, go someplace fun, and you can do other work if it's like if there'll be a loss if you don't. So go to work if you'll lose your job if you don't, or whatever. Do business as is necessary, but it's ideal to take off if you can, and to limit work if you can. But you're allowed to do anything if it's again enhances the celebration of the holiday. So that's Chol HaMoed. So Pesach and Sukkot, these week-long holidays, have middle days that aren't Yom Tov, that don't have work restrictions, but do have this other special status. If you have an electric oven with a Shabbat mode, so the Shabbat mode probably doesn't let you do all that much on Shabbat that you couldn't do without it, or it's sort of a misnomer in most cases. But if your oven is a Shabbat mode, it does allow you to do a lot in Yom Tov. Okay, it means you can put things in the oven in Yom Tov. And again, so there's no cooking restrictions. There are just restrictions around igniting fires and using electricity. It's but the cooking itself is permissible, so that it makes a lot of things more relaxed in Yom Tov. Again, because it's 2 days, sometimes 3 days. If Yom Tov goes into Shabbat, it could be 3 days of holiday of special status. If you couldn't cook at all, you run out of food. So the ability to cook it sort of makes the day. Shabbat is special, and but the less strict nature of Yom Tov makes it a little bit more festive and just allows for more elaborate meals, more diverse meals than are possible on Shabbat. It's not here. So everything's not in here. It should be. Erev Tavshilin, I think it's worth mentioning that now. And also how we light candles. How do we light candles? Let's say on Yom Tov. So Yom Tov in diaspora is 2 days. So I just said you can transfer fire, you can't light a fire. So how do you light candles on the second day of Yom Tov? So the answer is you light it from an existing fire. So you have a 48-hour candle or a 24-hour candle, and when it's the second day, you use a match and you light it from the 48-hour candle, and then you light your Yom Tov candles for that second night of Yom Tov, and then you put the match down on something fireproof, and it goes out by itself. You don't extinguish the match by yourself, nor do you strike the match to ignite it. You can transfer flame in that way. You might, and again, something similar could be used to start a pilot. If you don't have a pilot light, you could use that to start a stove in certain circumstances. When Shabbat follows Yom Tov, if Friday is a Yom Tov, what do you do? So, the permission to cook on Yom Tov, the Torah says, right, right, you're only allowed, don't do any malacha, don't do any work, just like on Shabbat, except you're allowed to do the thing that is necessary for you to eat. That means you're only allowed to cook on Yom Tov for your Yom Tov meal. So for a Jew who's going to eat, you're allowed to cook for a Jew who's going to celebrate Yom Tov by eating a Yom Tov meal. That type of cooking is permissible on Yom Tov, but you can't cook on Yom Tov for after Yom Tov. You also can't cook on Yom Tov for someone who isn't Jewish, if that would occur. It's just to have, like the Torah wants us to have Yom Tov meals in this particular way, and so we're allowed to cook for you. So when Shabbat follows Yom Tov, we're in a bind, because you can't cook on Yom Tov for after Yom Tov, but you can't cook on Shabbat. So when are you going to do your Shabbat preparations? So there's a device, a mechanism called Erev Tavshilin, which basically, before Yom Tov even begins, on Wednesday afternoon, right? Because this would be a case where Yom Tov begins Wednesday night, Thursday, then Thursday night, Friday, a second day Yom Tov, and then Shabbat begins. So on Wednesday afternoon, before the first day Yom Tov begins, you set aside 2 pieces of food. You basically declare these pieces of food are like the beginnings of my preparations for Shabbat, and then that allows you to then prepare for Shabbat over the course of Yom Tov. So the Erev Tavshilin is, and it's a bracha you have to say. So you separate 2 pieces of food, put them aside on Wednesday, say the bracha, you make a declaration. Through the mechanism of this Erev, this household, we're going to be allowed to cook and prepare and bake and everything from Yom Tov to Shabbat. If you forget, you're allowed to rely on the Erev Shul that the rabbi makes on behalf of the whole community, but it's best to do it for yourself. So you do this whenever the first day of Yom Tov is Wednesday night, Thursday. So it happens not every year, but it happens depending on when the days of the week occur. It could be a couple of times every year or two. So this is a trivia question. What is the one mitzvah that everyone ought to do several times every few years? And the answer is Erev Tov, okay? Because you only do it when the first day of Yom Tov is on a Wednesday night, okay? Which happens a couple of times every few years. So we talked about permission to cook on Yom Tov, permission to carry on Yom Tov. We talked about Erev Tov that allows us to prepare for Shabbat on Yom Tov. Let's go back to the calendar, okay? Back to the sheet. Back to letter C, number 2, Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, I guess everyone here has celebrated Rosh Hashanah a bunch of times, not necessarily here at the shul though. Some of you here at the shul. A lot to say about Rosh Hashanah. I think among the books that I've recommended, The Jewish Way, I think, is a very nice description of all the holidays in the calendar. I think Rosh Hashanah is a great description of the meaning of the day in that book. Kito's book, Book of Our Heritage, which is on the CRC reading list, talks about Rosh Hashanah. So what do I want to say? What do I want to add to Rosh Hashanah? It's a day that is both joyous and solemn. It's a joyous day because one of the themes of the day is God's kingship, and so it's like a coronation party. It's also a solemn day because it inaugurates a season of judgment, introspection, and repentance. It's sort of long liturgy. It's a lengthy service in shul. Even people who come to shul frequently find Rosh Hashanah service is a little bit daunting because just the core element of the service has changed more than for other holidays. A lot of liturgical poetry is added. Liturgical poetry is really hard to understand because it's written in very baroque, like sort of strange grammatical forms, lots of allusions. And then also the core Amidah on Shachrit, especially Musaf, has changed dramatically. Musaf, Amidah, Rosh Hashanah, the longest prayer of the year. We have 3 big additions that speak about the themes of the day. The theme of Malchiot, God's kingship, the theme of Zikronot, that God remembers and recalls all things on this day, and the theme of Shofarot, that there is redemption ahead in the future. So you can have a whole curriculum on Jewish thought and Jewish theology just by looking at the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah, which we're not going to do, but you have those books on the calendar, on the recommended reading list, and you've experienced it or you will experience it, right? Okay, so there is Yom Tov though, so that means we make Kiddush Yom Tov night and we make Kiddush Yom Tov day for both of the days of Rosh Hashanah. We have festive meals at night, festive meals during the day. Meaning a festive meal, meaning we wash and hamotzi to chalot. At that meal, the meal that was preceded with Kiddush, it's a special Kiddush for Rosh Hashanah, printed in in your Seder room. There's a question of Rosh Hashanah, if you recall. I mentioned that originally, right, Rosh Hashanah in the Torah is a one-day festival, but even back in the day when the calendar was determined by witnesses, they ran into trouble in Rosh Hashanah because it's on the first of the month. It's the only holiday on the first of the month. So they knew that depending on when the witnesses would come forward, either today or tomorrow would be Rosh Hashanah. So they wake up in the morning, so no one would do any work because maybe it's Rosh Hashanah. They wouldn't do any of the special service in the temple for Rosh Hashanah until the witnesses came. So they'd wait around. And the Mishnah says, one day the witnesses came really late, and they had to, I think I mentioned this, they had to squeeze in the full Rosh Hashanah service into 45 minutes or something, right before the sunset. And they said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. From now on, we're going to celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, because this is ridiculous. And so it was. In the land of Israel, for a brief period of time, when they went to the fixed calendar, they reverted to celebrating Rosh Hashanah as a one-day holiday, but that custom lost out in history, and so even in Israel, Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day holiday. And so, depending on when Shabbat occurs, Shabbat could occur right after Rosh Hashanah, right? Yes. And so, it's the occasion when Israelis have what they call quote-unquote 3-day Yom Tov, 3 days without work, back to back, which we have all the time. The diaspora Israelis don't know how to handle it. They freak out when it happens. So it's kind of fun when that occurs. That's Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day holiday, but there's also some sort of question. therefore, is it really a 2-day holiday like the other 2 days? Maybe the Gemara talks about maybe it's a Yom HaRichta, maybe it's just one long 48-hour day. Because even in Israel we celebrate as 2 days, that's kind of strange. So maybe it's really one day that's spread out over 2 days. And so there's a question about whether or not we should say the Shechianu bracha. The blessing of Shechianu is said right before doing annual mitzvah. So it's said in a couple of cases. It's said for like happy times meaning you buy something new, buy a house, buy a car, expensive jewelry, expensive clothing, you say the Shechianu bracha. It's also said before annual mitzvah. So Kiddush for Rosh Hashanah, that's a mitzvah you do once a year, right? So you would say the Shechianu bracha right after, as part of the Kiddush for Rosh Hashanah. What about the second day of Rosh Hashanah? You've said Shechianu already, so you should be done. Except we have identical liturgy on the second day of all the holidays because we really want to just like really emphasize, no, keep 2 days of these holidays and it's a serious thing. So we say Shechianu twice actually on all the holidays. First day and second day we say the Shechianu blessing identically because the liturgy is identical. Rosh Hashanah, there's a question, maybe the liturgy isn't, maybe it's not really a second day Yom Tov, in which case we would have all of the practice of the first day of Yom Tov on the second day of Yom Tov, so we should say the Shechianu bracha. But maybe it isn't, maybe it's like one long day, so there shouldn't be a Shechianu. So how do we resolve that dilemma? We resolve that dilemma by eating like new fruits. Because another occasion to say the Shechianu bracha is to eat like a seasonal fruit for the first time in the year. So that's a custom to have new fruits on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, because that way we resolve this doubt about whether or not we should say the Shechianu. And the truth is, all of the Yom Tovim on the second day of Yom Tov, it's a nice idea to wear a new garment, new piece of clothing, because that's a way to, again, resolve that doubt. Is which day is really Yom Tov? Is this really the second day? Is it really the first day? So you wear a new item of clothing, and you have in mind, I'm going to say the Shechianu bracha, and if this is really not, this is really the second day, not the first day, so I have a new shirt on and wearing something, I have something new, and that's why I'm saying the Shechianu bracha. Maimonides actually says that that there's a mitzvah to rejoice on the holidays. And what does that mean to rejoice on the holidays? He says, well, for men that means meat and wine, and for women that means new clothing and jewelry. So he says that people mentioned by women in their household, clothing and jewelry, whatever. This is not, I don't know if that's the same anymore. I think plenty of women like meat, plenty of men, like clothing also. Women can buy their own jewelry, whatever. But that's what Maimonides wrote 800 years ago, that men celebrate the holidays by eating meat and wine. Women enjoy the holidays by being given gifts of clothing and jewelry. But he also says that if you celebrate the holiday and don't also make sure that the poor are able to eat and have food and celebrate as well, if you haven't provided that before, then you're not really celebrating the holiday. That's not the simcha shel mitzvah, that's not the joy of observing this mitzvah, that's the joy of your belly, he says, simchat kresa. That's just gluttony, that's not pure mitzvah. So we eat nice food, we also make sure that we provide for the poor to have food to eat on the holiday, where they can celebrate as well. Okay, that's Rosh Hashanah. What else about Rosh Hashanah? There's a special mitzvah on Rosh Hashanah to blow the shofar, or to hear the shofar blown. Many ways to understand the mitzvah of shofar. Either it's an inarticulate prayer, we're praying without words, or maybe it's a wake-up call. So it can either be directed upwards or directed downwards. I think both of those meanings are true, both are there. Shofar, there's a dispute in the Talmud about how the shofar should be blown, and we want to accommodate all of those permutations, and so it ends up, we sort of magnify the number of shofar blasts until, and it gets us to pretty close to 100, and so we just threw some extra ones at the end to get it to 100. So we blow the 100 different shofar blasts on Rosh Hashanah. The original grouping is just to accommodate all the different positions about how the shofar should be blown, and then that gets us close to 100, so let's make it a round number and do 100. The truth is, once you start going down this route of permutations and halachic disputes about how it should be blown, do you breathe in between the blasts, do you not, what exactly each sound should sound, the permutations are actually expand exponentially, and there are yeshivot where even after Rosh Hashanah services people gather and they do another set of shofar blasts to accommodate even more opinions about how 1,028 different ways to fulfill the mitzvah. If it's a biblical mitzvah, you want to fulfill it, okay? But we do 100 here, and that's you fill all the basic opinions.
Got the shlich, huh?
The what?
The shlich?
The who?
Tashlich.
Oh, tashlich. Thank you. Sorry. Tashlich is a practice on Rosh Hashanah as well, to go to a body of water and to recite prayers about forgiveness. Some of the custom to also throw breadcrumbs into the water. I was taught not to do that because you're not supposed to feed animals on Shabbat or Yom Tov that don't belong to you. If they're fish that you might eat, it's not so good. But really the liturgy is the more important part. You say it's prayers about forgiveness. And that's done, again, here we do go to Lake Michigan. It's very nice. It's sort of, the weather's nice, usually nice time of year for the weather, staying on the lake. You see people from all the different congregations, strolling up and down the lakefront. It's a very nice time of the year. When the first day of Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat, we do not blow shofar on Shabbat. Blowing the shofar itself would be permissible on Shabbat. There is a rabbinic prohibition against playing musical instruments on Shabbat, but the biblical commandment to blow shofar would override that. But the rabbi said don't blow shofar on Shabbat because somebody may carry the shofar in a public domain to learn how to blow it, or if you don't know how to blow it, somebody else knows, I'll bring it to him. So less people come to carry a shofar, we'll just cancel the mitzvah that year. And we blow shofar on the second day. But the second day, again, it's not the actual, the second day is only the, maybe not the original biblical way to observe the holiday. So it's really a tremendous thing that the rabbis are telling us, don't observe this biblical mitzvah to blow shofar because we're worried that people are going to carry a shofar. So some years the mitzvah is sort of not, is only done on the second day. Okay? I think actually this coming Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Shabbat, so it'll be one of those years. So you should come back, make sure you come back the second day. We have a real drop in attendance on the second day of Rosh Hashanah in the shul, which is, I guess people are sort of shuled out or something for the second day, but they're both equal days. There's importance to observe the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and especially when you're going to miss shofar on the first day, so, okay. Also, the custom of Rosh Hashanah to eat symbolic foods. It's the beginning of the year, we want to be in a good mood, we want to be optimistic and happy, and so we eat foods that symbolize the good things. So, very famous one is the apple and honey for a sweet new year. Other communities, people eat a ram's head, the head, not the tail. People eat fish heads. People eat all sorts of vegetables that symbolize certain things, because the Hebrew or Aramaic name of that vegetable is like a pan, right? You've seen this, right?
Yeah, Mo's family does it. There's like a whole
thing?
A whole thing. It's like a Seder, but for Rosh Hashanah, and you go through like 12 different things.
Do they do lamb's heads?
They have tongue.
Tongue, okay.
We do it all.
You do the whole thing?
Yeah.
Everything.
Lamb's head also?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
More
Fi-
than
Fish head?
what?
Fish head also?
Yeah. Fish head and pomegranate and all that.
And
You could do-
pomegranate and leeks, I think.
Leeks, yeah. You can do Swedish fish heads?
They did that because no one wanted to eat the fish heads.
Yeah.
The kids are always somewhat like, I want it, but I don't.
Yeah. You could also make up your own, I knew a community where people had raisin celery salads.
Celery,
Yeah,
So you should have a raisin celery. Raisin celery. Okay, so you can think of other ones.
They do carrot, they do pumpkin.
Pumpkin's a good one, yeah.
String beans.
String beans.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Okay, so you can always think of more, that symbolize, the name symbolizes, or the item symbolizes, or looks like something, whatever. The point is to be happy, and to be optimistic, and to just sort of go into the new year with a lot of good feelings. In the recent years, we've gotten into gourmet single source honeys, because the honey tastes different depending on what the bees say. So, wildflower honey and deep forest honey and buckwheat honey and
Swedish fish honey.
Swedish fish honey. Yes, exactly. So it's a serious day, but a happy day. It's sort of an interesting feeling. That's Rosh Hashanah. Shul goes until about 1 o'clock in Rosh Hashanah here. We aim to finish everything wrapped up at 1 o'clock. So a normal Shabbat, we end between 11:30, 11:45. Rosh Hashanah, we start earlier and we go until 1. So that's, we run a pretty tight ship here, so, as you know, okay. 10 days later is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Sabbath of Sabbaths, Shabbat Shabbaton. So Yom Kippur that actually even though it can occur in different days of the week, it still has the restrictions of Shabbat. You can't cook and you can't carry. Yom Kippur has 5 additional restrictions. They are eating and drinking, wearing shoes.
Leather shoes.
See what that means? Anointing oneself with like oil and stuff, washing oneself, and sexual intimacy. 5 restrictions on Yom Kippur. Shoes, leather shoes, okay. Once upon a time, that's what shoes were, okay? So you're allowed to wear shoes if it's not, so used to be if it was like unsafe to go barefoot, people would wear shoes, and then take off their shoes when it became safe again. So you would go barefoot indoors, you put on your boots to go outside if it's muddy, if there's glass in the street, and they take it off again when they came indoors. That was common. At some point, the shift was, what about shoes that are like not really shoes, like canvas shoes or whatever, and that is more common. There's some who say, they're like some of those like non-leather shoes are actually extremely comfortable and protective, and you're kind of missing the whole point. So there are different opinions about that. If that resonates with you, so wear non-leather shoes that are not so comfortable. I once had like a pair of like Converse sneakers, but they were like they were like the sort of knockoff like Target Converse sneakers. Like every pebble I could like feel through the soles of those shoes. So that would be very appropriate. Or just maybe wear comfy sneakers or Crocs or whatever when you're outside, and then when you come inside, just take them off. That's like just go barefoot indoors and only wear anything on your feet when you are like walking outside where it isn't safe to be barefoot. But if you're sick in certain ways, you can eat and drink, etc. Okay, like obviously all of these restrictions have. If your hands are dirty, you can wash them. If you use the toilet, you can wash your hands afterwards. If somehow you get mud on you, whatever, you can wash your hands, but you just can't wash for pleasure. So only wash something that gets dirty if it gets dirty, but otherwise we don't wash any of people.
What about the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and
10 days of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, the 10 days of repentance, our time of sort of heightened spiritual energy, preparing for Yom Kippur. People call friends and family to apologize. People spend a lot of time thinking about how they want to be better in the new year. You can have people have strategies maybe. You feel like you write a journal and one day I'm going to focus on things I do well and how I can improve those and reinforce those good things I do. Next day, these are things I do bad in my interpersonal relationship. These are the things I do badly in my religious life, and how can I improve those? And you can really plot it out and strategize, which is a great way to do it. But you have some time. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and there are additional prayers we say during those days called Slichot. Actually, we start saying Slichot already before Rosh Hashanah. Sephardim start saying Slichot a month before Rosh Hashanah. The Ashkenazi practice is you start saying Slichot a week before Rosh Hashanah, and you say them through the Aseret Yemei Shuvah, the 10 days of repentance, culminating in Yom Kippur. And these are penitential prayers recited either early in the morning or late at night. Here we do them early in the morning. We sort of get to come to shul half an hour earlier than we would otherwise to recite these penitential prayers. When I say we, I mean about 10 of us, 11 of us, and Rosh Hashanah. But in theory, larger crowds. In Yerushalayim now it's become very popular. They have these slichot tours, where groups will come to the city, I guess as tour groups, and they'll go around to the different congregations that are reciting these penitential prayers. You've done that, or you?
No, I've heard of it.
You've heard of it, okay.
It's very, usually in high school they do it a lot.
Oh, yeah?
It's very, very spiritual. You got thousands. It's
Wow.
Elul is packed.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, Yerushalayim is a special place for all these holidays, especially that season, in yeshiva is also, Elul is a very intense time, a real intense time. It's like Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah. We're getting ready, it's a time of introspection, the time of improvement, the time of judgment is around the corner, you know, okay, that's the month. Okay, let's pause here, and we'll continue. If there's anything else to say about Yom Kippur, we'll say it next time, and then we'll go on to the other holidays. The next time we meet, let's see. Next Tuesday is the 9th. That could work. Should we meet again at 8 p.m. on February 9th? That good? Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Mhm.